Hello, my name is Alicia, and welcome to my Unnoticed Evil channel, where I talk about the hidden evils in culture. And today I'm going to be talking about rules of politeness and how, when taken too far, they can conflict with morality. Rules of politeness, when taken too far, can create an environment where evil flourishes. And sometimes evildoers can even favor rules of politeness. Now, first, the good. Rules of politeness can be good, of course, for showing respect and consideration for others. They can be good for making people feel better about themselves. They can even be good for forming diplomatic relations between nations. And, of course, they're good for preventing people from getting offended. However, sometimes people should be offended or uncomfortable or disturbed. For example, let us say that there is some animal abuse happening at an animal shelter. Somebody decides to show graphic images of the animal abuse. These graphical images may disturb people. And some people may say that people should not be shown these graphic images because they can be disturbing, offensive, they might be upsetting. However, though, maybe people should get upset because getting upset, getting disturbed can help motivate people to action, to help mitigate this atrocity. And so you can see that being less offensive is not always the right thing to do. Sometimes we need to show things that are going to offend people because otherwise we'll reduce the motivation to do something. Now, evildoers have reasons to favor rules of politeness. Rules of politeness can provide evildoers an easy way to put on a facade of goodness, while still causing trouble on the side. Even the evilest people in the world know how to say please and thank you. Furthermore, rules of politeness can create an environment where anyone who attempts to condemn a bad behavior could be viewed as being rude, mean, or disrespectful. In other words, don't call the evildoer evil. We don't want to hurt the evildoer's feelings. As an example, maybe you're in a relationship with a toxic person, and this toxic person may condemn you as being rude, unless you act like nothing is wrong with his or her bad behavior, despite how destructive the behavior is. But this rule of politeness goes against what is right. Some say actually there are two kinds of evil in the world: those that actively do evil, and those who stand by and let it happen. Hence, a rule of politeness that calls on people to refrain from telling people anything bad about themselves essentially is calling on people to be a secondary form of evil. Now, many people who exhibit bad behaviors live in the delusion that they are regular, good, decent people. When we condemn their behaviors, they may say we are being mean, and certainly we don't want to be mean. What they're really doing is enticing us to play along with their delusions, while they leave a path of destruction and suffering wherever they go. And when someone is living in misery because of them, they may go into denial that they are the cause of that misery. And so rules of politeness go against morality when they call on us to tell people what they want to hear but not what they need to hear. And sometimes a person will continue to behave badly until a rule of politeness is broken. Now, you may have heard the phrase, bring it to them gently. This is not always appropriate. It can involve downplaying the seriousness of a person's bad behaviors. In my opinion, it is only appropriate when we know that the person means well and has made an honest mistake. Lots of times, though, bad behavior is intentional, or it may even come from negligence, and that should be dealt with severely, not lightly. Now, when we are too afraid of hurting people's feelings, we can make ourselves easy to manipulate. It can cause us to remain in bad relationships because we are afraid that if we break away, it will hurt the other person's feelings. Meanwhile, the other person we are in a bad relationship with may be exhibiting bad behaviors that are not meant to be tolerated. By continuing in the bad relationship, we are sending the false message that the bad behaviors are okay. Continuing in a bad relationship does not really benefit anybody. And if the other person is a good person, then he or she will want to be informed about any bad behaviors that are hurting somebody. Now, in some settings, people will place feelings and sentimentalism above morality. This environment is characterized by dishonesty and tolerance of wicked behaviors in the name of preserving people's feelings and allowing everyone to save face. But when you go and you say it as it is and are forthright, you may come across as being blunt or harsh. Maybe people will think this is just your personality, but they are the problem. They should be more like you. Now, you may have heard of the famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, published back in the 1980s. It gives lots of good advice on how to get people to like you, how to form good business connections and networking connections. It tells you to think about what the other person wants as a way of getting what you want. And it tells you to appeal to a person's desire for a feeling of importance. But for a long time, I had felt that something was missing from this book. And I think what was missing was that the book does not tell you how to deal with people who truly have bad intentions and are up to no good. As an example, one of the principles of the book is do not criticize, condemn, or complain. Now, if I were a bad guy, I would like an environment where nobody criticized, condemned, or complained. I could do what I want, and people would be unlikely to say anything. So you see, social skills and morality are in two different worlds, though they do seem to overlap sometimes. When someone's behavior offends other people, sometimes it might be because the person is showing poor social skills, or maybe it's because the person actually did do something wrong that is hurting people and that's giving the other people a good reason to get offended. Well, these are two very different reasons to be offended by somebody's behavior. One has to do with social psychology, the other has to do with morality, and those two things are not to be confused with each other. Now, in my observations, young women are especially preoccupied with being nice and polite. I was once at a McDonald's with a couple of young women. One of them was abstaining from meat, dairy, and egg for the period of Lent and was putting some salad dressing on her salad. I warned her that Italian dressing sometimes has cheese in it. Immediately, the other woman said, "Don't tell her that." And I thought, well, doesn't she want to know that? Doesn't she want to avoid dairy? Or does she just want to think she is? So you see that sometimes there's just certain rules of play people try to exhibit that just don't seem to make sense to me. But another striking story, I was in a social group, and there was this one woman in the social group who was victimizing other people, one after the other. She would say she needed a temporary place to live, and people would allow her to live with them for a while. But it seemed like whenever people allowed her to live with them, she would basically take advantage of them and sometimes drive people to fits of rage. And she actually lived with me for a couple of months. She would try and wear my clothes, take food out of my pantry, and when I tried to get her to leave, I had to call the police. And another guy named Malcolm actually had to pay $1,000 to get a lawyer to sign her off his lease and pay $150 to get the locks changed on his doors. But you see, the reason she was able to victimize so many people was that people were just too nice to say anything bad about her to each other. They were not warning each other about her. And actually, the leader of the social group had posted a message about her to the listserv, describing her in very flowery metaphors that were certainly not representative of who she was. And he wanted to help her to find a temporary place to live. In other words, he was helping her victimize more people. So myself and others had informed him of what she's really like. And I decided to post a message to the listserv describing what she really was like. But the leader of the group had blocked it, saying that this listserv is not meant for gossip or trash talk. Of course, in his mind, it's bad to say anything bad about anybody. And so he, later on, had posted the same exact message about her again, in very flowery, beautiful metaphors. And so at that point, I left the group, because I'm not going to be in a group where certain rules of politeness are placed a higher priority than people's well-being. This kind of environment allows for repeat victimizations to take place. Now, sometimes rules of politeness can make sense at first, but they can be harmful in certain situations. For example, at a social event, when people bring food to share, like at a potluck, it may be considered rude to bring food and not share. But what if a person has food allergies and is not able to eat the food that the other people are eating? Should this person have to share food with others, knowing that they cannot eat the other person's food? Well, this would not really be fair. The person who cares about other people will recognize when certain rules of politeness are just not appropriate. And on the other hand, the person who doesn't care about others can still exhibit rules of politeness, but keep in mind that rules of politeness are more external and superficial. And so to conclude, being nice and being righteous are not the same thing.